Marhaba, and welcome to the Matrix Green Pill, where real people connect.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Matrix Green Pill podcast. Shireen here with you as your host today, and I'm joined by the lovely Hilmarie. Welcome, Hilmarie. How are you?
Hey, Shireen, I'm great. Thank you so much for asking. And I am so excited to have another fantastic guest on the show today.
Yes, you're right. Today is indeed special because we do get to speak to Malavika Varadan. While Malavika wears many hats, she is most known for her dazzling voice as a radio presenter on City 1016. But not only is she an RJ, she's also a singer, a fitness enthusiast, a TEDx speaker, and a drama educator at the Hive.
Wow, so very accomplished. Malavika, welcome and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Hilmarie. Thank you so much. That sounds like quite an introduction. I hope I live up to it.
I'm so sure you will. So, Malavika, we know a little bit about you and your background, but for our audience who might not know you, could you please tell us a little bit about you?
Sure, absolutely. So I moved to Dubai in 2008 and I moved to be a part of the Arabian Radio Network. I joined the biggest Bollywood station in the region called City 1016, and I hosted the breakfast show on that station for 10 years out of the 13 that I've spent in Dubai. But last year I made a daring decision and decided to step out of radio and focus my time on my public speaking and drama school that I run. It's called the Hive, and it's a studio where we teach children how to be confident and how to overcome stage fright. But of course, my life in media has taken me to television. So I've done a couple of TV shows. I write for a column in the Khaleej Times. I did a few TEDx's and one that got really popular. I still wonder why and how. And yeah, but that's a little bit about me.
Amazing. As I said in the introduction, so very accomplished.
Yeah, it's such an exciting life. Okay, so let's jump into it. How did you decide to become a radio host? And how was that whole process of, moving to Dubai and starting on City 1016?
So I started doing theater when I was about 12 years old. And being in theater teaches you a lot about improvisation and about thinking on your feet. And in a sense, you're constantly in character and you're very used to being on stage. So by the time I got to college, I felt like I had a lot of confidence and I was able to do things with my voice. I was able to understand my voice. I was able to understand the stories that I could tell with it and the way I could use it in different ways, right? I was at a college event where another radio presenter from a local radio station had come to judge this event. And we finished the event. I got off stage and I went up to him and said, "Hey, listen, I've been listening to radio for a really long time. Do you think I could try out to be a presenter?" And he said, "Look, there are no jobs available right now, but why don't you come by and do a voiceover test?" So for a few years, I got paid a pittance. By that, I literally mean a few dirhams, yeah,
Wow.
to go to this radio station every day. And I do these voice samples for radio commercials that were selling saris or I don't know, coffee or steel ladders or really obscure things like that. And eventually there came a time when one of the radio presenters on this really great station was quitting to join another network. And so they opened up the opportunity to me and I went in and did an audition and I was still in college. So I was only 19 years old at the time and I landed the job. And that's when I started doing radio in Bangalore. But in 2008, I got headhunted by this network in Dubai, and I got this call, and they said, "Would you like to move to the UAE?" And honestly, nobody in my life had ever been to Dubai, so we weren't one of those families where you usually have a cousin or an uncle or an aunt or somebody who lives in Dubai, but I didn't know anyone in this city. But I just thought, hey, look, what's the worst? I'll try it for a year and I'll have this international radio experience on my CV. And I was exactly 21 years old. I was like, I'll give it a shot. What's the worst that can happen? And
Wow.
13 years later, I haven't moved back.
That's so crazy. Yeah. I mean, I didn't even know that they were headhunting for radio presenters from like other countries and all of that. That's really interesting to know.
You know what's weird about it? Because when I was in India, I was on a radio station that was playing international music. So when I moved to Dubai, I was actually speaking in Hindi for the very first time on air. And I come from the South, so Hindi is not my first language. It was a struggle for me to incorporate Hindi into my daily speak. And I was completely unfamiliar with Bollywood music. I didn't know one hero from the other. My knowledge of the industry was poor. I think the only thing that really kept me going was understanding that there is some sort of human commonality that all of us share, and trying to curate my content around those bits and steer away from Bollywood until I got to know more and more about it. Yeah.
Wow, what an experience. And it's so
That's
impressive that you were willing to put in the effort to get the experience and the exposure. Even while you were not being paid for it, you were getting rich in experience.
Yeah, I mean, I say this to the kids that I meet all the time: intern as much as you can, do as much free work as you can in your college years and in your high school years, because then when you pass out of college at the age of 21, you already have tried and tested so many different fields, you know. I did.
Absolutely.
Plus, I think that nowadays with most industries, you need at least like 3 to 5 years experience for entry-level jobs. So you got to start really, really early.
And you can add value. I think if you're responsible and you're resourceful, there is a space for young people. We need that kind of energy in our workplaces. And as long as you're not, wasting people's time, I think they're more than happy to open their doors to you and offer you that learning experience. So, I mean, why not?
Yeah, that's true. Great point. So, Malavika, what are some of the benefits and the challenges that came with this radio job?
Well, some of the benefits was basically that UAE is a wonderful market for radio. This is one of the few markets in the world where I think radio is much bigger than television, in the sense that it's part of everybody's habit. Stars are built on radio. You become a local celebrity of sorts. You become a household name. So it gives you the kind of reach that I don't think television does. And even print doesn't have the kind of reach that radio does. So it's by far the biggest medium, I think, or at least has been for the last decade.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's definitely one of the big benefits of radio. Secondly, I think there's a sort of intimacy and an authenticity that the platform offers you. I mean, in all the television work that I've done, I find myself often being very conscious of how I'm standing and how my makeup is and, the camera angles and this and that. But with radio, you are free to be a lot more you. And I think that kind of everyday speak, that being able to echo the words on the street, I think that really helps build your personality and helps you discover a lot more about yourself, which is useful in so many ways.
Yeah, without the scrutiny of, feeling that people might judge your appearance or your behavior of sorts, I guess.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it for you guys. If you were doing this as a television show, as opposed to a podcast.
Exactly. This is exactly why we're
gonna
doing
say,
a podcast and not a video.
I mean, truth is, we can be wearing pajamas and that's all. I mean, sometimes you just need to be wearing pajamas to be able to discover your voice in the world,
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
What about the challenges, would you say?
The challenges were definitely the early mornings. So 4:30 a.m. every weekday of your life is a very demanding schedule. I think that was definitely one of the challenges. The second was actually that I was not someone who grew up around that much of Bollywood. So very often I felt like my audiences knew more about a film or a hero or a certain legacy than I did. So I had to educate myself, A, and B, also be okay with saying that, hey, these are some things I just don't know. Yeah, I think these were some of the challenges. And as I spent more and more time in the industry, I think it was also about finding ways to be better and learn more, even if it wasn't being demanded of you upfront, if you know what I mean.
I can totally relate, especially to the first part. I'm not a morning person, so that would have been impossible for me every morning at 4:00.
Same.
It's crazy. And you don't have any warm-up time. 6 a.m. the mic goes on and you've got to be bright and chirpy and have that morning energy, because nobody really wants to hear about how you're sleepy and you need coffee. So
Yeah, so you need to wake everyone else as well.
Now, let's talk about your other exciting role. You are managing the wonderful platform called the Hive. Could you tell us about that?
So I am the managing director of a beautiful space called the Hive. We are in Dubai. We're a 7-year-old space. We are dedicated to the performing arts and helping children discover their love for stage and create more empathetic, more collaborative, more confident young people in the world using all the wonderful things that drama has taught us. So I often say that drama is our tool to equip young people with all the skills they need to be better everything and better everyone's. So yeah, that's what I do.
That's
I
lovely.
took over this business in 2019. I bought it over from two very dear friends who had started it, but we were teaching drama from 2014, and we started really, really small. We had 40 kids coming to us when we began, and today we are at 300 students who come into
Oh,
the Hive.
wow.
Yeah. And we work with different schools, different universities. We do workshops for adults. We're used as a space for improv and musical theater. And basically, we're like a home for artists that need a space to be.
So wonderful. So how did you decide to join the Hive? Is it because of your love of theater, or was there something else?
So I was doing a lot of theater in Bangalore before I moved here, right? And interestingly, on one of the shows that I was doing, I actually asked the question to the audience. I said, "Hey, is there any theater space here, or is there anybody doing plays? Because I don't want to learn drama. I've been doing drama a really long time, but I'd love to do a play." And that got me connected to a group of people who were doing community theater at the time. Those friendships developed over time. We did a few plays locally at Daktak and at Kilachand and all these little local theater spots. But there came a point in our friendship and in all the theater work that we were doing where we said, okay, listen, we need a home for our work. We can't keep renting out aerobic studios and rehearsing in people's living rooms and backyards and be thrown out at 11 o'clock when we get loud. And from there was born the idea of the Hive, and it was set up by Jimish and Darshana, who had spent many years in the UAE. And Darshana said, look, I've been a stay-at-home mom for 13 years. I want to get back into work. Why don't I start a space and you guys can teach drama? We started with 40 kids. We grew and grew and grew over time. And then these friends of mine got their PR in Canada because they had applied for it and they weren't expecting to get it so quickly, but they did. And then began the search for who's going to buy the Hive, who's going to take it over. And I had been teaching at the Hive for all of those years, but I never in my wildest dreams thought that I could be an entrepreneur, that I could have the guts to buy a business, especially because radio had been doing well. I mean, I had a job where I was being paid decently. It got me fame and recognition. There were other opportunities that were cropping up on the side, and radio is a full-time job. But I sort of took a trip to the mountains on a trek, decided, you know what, I'm just going to jump and do this, because if I don't do it now, when am I going to do it? How long am I going to keep doing the same radio show? It's so comfortable. It would be easy to do this my whole life, but I think I should choose the more difficult path. And so I came back, I told these friends of mine, I'm like, guys, I'm ready to buy it. Let's get started. And then the conversations began about the takeover and the buying over of the business. And 3 months later, I had a business card that said managing director of the Hive.
Wow,
Amazing.
what an incredible story. Excellent. Fantastic for you that you were willing to take that leap of faith in a way to take on that responsibility. Yeah, fantastic. So tell me, how important do you think it is for kids to develop the artistic skills at a young age? And what is the youngest age that you start teaching at?
So we have kids as young as 4, and I think that is definite. By the age of 4, they are already full of ideas. They're already full of expressions. And we see that drama helps tremendously between the ages of 4 and 6 with their literacy skills, right? That the ability to read or speak or communicate, because once they learn how to add expression to their words, they feel a lot more confident about picking up a book. And then that starts to sort of snowball into this effect that lasts through the rest of their lives and through the rest of their drama journey. We have kids who at the age of 7 and 8 are doing their first play on stage. They're, already they know how to stand under the lights. They already know how to position themselves with their bodies. They already know how to work with other co-actors without any adult supervision. And to me, I think that's a massive massive skill to have.
Of course.
I have kids who are, 13 and 14 who are doing pieces. I mean, how beautiful is drama, right? That we give them pieces that are written by, say, Maya Angelou or, by a modern poet. And through these pieces and through performance of these pieces and through choosing texts that make them think, they're able to explore concepts of diversity and gender and race and oppression and millions of things, relationships, marriages, families, work cultures. They're able to explore this way, way before they would actually be experiencing it in that first-hand way. And we're able to give them this vocabulary to discuss these issues and understand them from a very empathetic place, because they are the character facing that, and to be the person is a far better way of understanding the world than to see it from a third person's perspective. You can read articles about gender and race, or you can be the person who is going through that, and you can understand it so much better.
Yeah, what a valuable experience for them.
Absolutely. It's so excellent. So you mentioned that you do poetry. So what are some of the other things or other programs that you do? Do you have some favorite ones?
Absolutely. So we do what we call speech and drama solo, where they explore texts by their favorite writers, our favorite writers, and we try to bring as diverse, a collection of text as possible into the classroom, where they then learn to perform it. So that's one sort of program that we do. But of course, when they're young, they're also doing Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and all this like really fun stuff, Horrid Henry and all their favorite stories. We also do public speaking. So that's a program that we started 2 years ago, and that's doing fantastically, because this allows children who are, believe it or not, guys, we've got 12-year-olds in our class who have their own podcast channels.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
That is incredible.
And they're
that
editing
would be
on
interesting
Anchor.
to listen to. That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, they're not perfect podcasts, but they're 12 years old and they already know how to work with Anchor and Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and how to, layer their transitions and how to choose the right background music and how to structure their content. And that's incredible to me.
That it is, no doubt.
Because even as someone who started early, I only had my first radio experience at 2020. Yeah. To imagine that these kids already have such a head start is fantastic. And we also do plays and productions, which is where we have these different scripts, and the kids get to perform these different roles. And we do a theater festival twice a year where all of the kids get to go on stage and perform for their friends and family and an audience.
That's
incredible. Incredible. Yeah. And you have mentioned diversity quite a bit. So I feel like I got to mention that I saw this article that you wrote on Khaleej Times called Once Upon a Diverse Time. I really enjoyed reading it, and I completely agree with the points that you made. But for those who might not have seen it, could you briefly tell them about it?
Absolutely. So a little something about me. I'm a publisher's daughter. My dad ran a publishing house. So I grew up around books. And for, I think, about 6 years of my life, I don't remember going out and playing with other kids. I was just one of those kids who would sit and read every single day when I came back. But so many of the books that I was reading, so much of the content I was consuming was based out of the UK, right? I read every Famous Five and every Enid Blyton and every Roald Dahl that existed. And that was wonderful because it taught me so much about good writing and a great imagination. But in retrospect, I realized how much of my life I spent thinking about a culture that wasn't mine, and sort of seeing that as a benchmark, because the characters in these books had blonde hair and blue eyes and fair skin and stayed in places that didn't have names that the places that I stayed had. And I wish that at a younger age, I was exposed to more diverse stories that allowed me to see myself as the heroine of the story, as opposed to I have to be that in order to achieve this perfection. It happens so much. The other day I was running a workshop. We were doing short story writing, and this was a class of 13 Indian kids. All of their stories, every single one of them, the lead character's name was Jane or Isabel or Emilia, and I was just thinking, why is the character's name not Malvika or Rohini or Saumya or Parvati? Why does she have to be, why? But that's also a factor of the kind of stuff they're consuming, right?
It's on television as well. All the the films that are the cartoons, animations of princesses. It's been the longest issue of time, I think. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
Absolutely, and it's reflected in everything in their reality, their toys, the stories they read, the films they watch, the YouTube commercials that pop up. Everything is constantly telling them that you with this hair and this skin and this language and these parents who look like this and eat like this, you're never going to be that. So I just wish there were more stories that allowed for us.
So there's a gap there for you, Malavika. You've got to create these stories about and create new heroes and new heroines with the names that you mentioned. So, and I'm not just saying you, I mean, people in general, right? I think diversity is so important. And if we can start it at that young age in the stories we expose our children to, it could create a wider universe for them, or a wider view on the world.
Absolutely. In fact, I think it's Lupita Nyong'o. She acted in Black Panther, and she's this fantastic actress. She just wrote a book called Sulwe, I think that's what it's called. And she talks about this as well. It's like, why can't we have more characters with curly, coarse African hair and dark skin?
Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, this is definitely on my list of things to do for the year.
Yeah, we got to teach diversity from a young age, and that is through the stories we expose our kids to. I love that. Excellent observation you've made there.
Thank you, you guys. You're very kind.
Important.
But why did you feel it was important to write about that issue?
I felt it was important to write about diversity because I see this every single day. I think as a young brown girl growing up in a city where so many of us are from the Asian subcontinent, I constantly see not just children, but young people and adults aspiring to be someone they are not and not be authentic. And I think that, that bothers me. That really bothers me, because I think to be authentic, you have to be proud of where you come from, and being proud of where you come from and being proud of your story in that, metaphorically as well, it comes from the stories that you consume, right? And what is culture if it's not just a big pool of stories?
Absolutely, that makes absolute sense. Yeah, I absolutely see where you're coming from. Now let's change gears a little bit and talk about you winning the Khaleej Times Woman of Substance Award back in 2018. That was certainly an amazing accomplishment. So can you tell us about that experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I must tell you something really funny. When I got the email, I thought it was a forward. Like, I just thought it was one of those PR forwards. There's no way that, why would you pick me? Like, maybe they're just like, they're trying to get me to cover it on the radio or something like that.
Funny.
And then they had to mail me again saying, hey, did you miss our previous email? Because we were asking you whether you'd like
wow, amazing
award. I was so flattered, and it felt so incredible to be chosen to be among this. What a group of women. There was, all kinds of change makers and trailblazers in that group. And the only other Asian woman on that list was Dr. Zulekha, who started the Zulekha Hospital group.
Wow.
She came there in her sari, and she's an octogenarian. But she is full of stories, and she could give any 20-year-old a run for her money. But it was so beautiful to be part of that group of women and to be counted as an important voice.
Yeah, brilliant.
Must have been amazing. Like, I can't imagine did you get to meet all of them, or
yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing.
It was amazing. I got to meet all of them, all these incredible women, Emirati women, women who run massive businesses, who are really making change in the region, and who stand for progress, and they stand for a new future, a future that is female.
Lovely.
Incredible. Okay. So As I mentioned in the intro, you have also done your own TEDx talk, which is super, super cool. You chose the topic 7 ways to make a conversation with anyone, and it's already racked over 17 million views on YouTube. I mean, wow, that's crazy. Could you tell us about that experience and why did you choose that topic?
Absolutely. I still don't know how it made it to 17 million. I really don't know. I mean, it wasn't complicated. It's hardly rocket science, right? Talking to strangers is like, who think that TEDx about that could get any, like that kind of numbers and views? For the first couple of million, I really thought it was a mistake, and I kept waiting for YouTube to correct it because I thought like maybe there's something wrong.
You were like in denial. You're like, oh, that doesn't make sense.
Maybe it's a mistake. Maybe it's actually in the hundreds, but they put an extra comma and an extra zero. So I got approached by this college in Dubai called BITS Pilani, and they asked me to do a TED talk. And this group of students, wonderful young minds, all of them in their late teens, sat and helped me come up with a subject. And I brought them many different ideas, but I realized that as I was talking to them, what I see as so natural, you get on the metro, you sit next to somebody, you just talk to them. It's how I've always been. But I think this ability to establish human connections is really a defining quality. It's a skill that's, transcends cultures and age groups. And I feel like as we get more and more connected digitally, we're losing the ability to do that in person. And that's scary.
So true.
It's scary to me.
It is so true, yeah.
I think many people find it very difficult to take that leap with somebody they've never spoken to.
They just become socially awkward in person.
Absolutely. And I'm a socially awkward person, believe it or not. But I think it's
I don't believe that.
Yeah, no, I don't believe that.
I get very nervous when people invite me to like gatherings and parties. But yeah, I mean, if you think it's difficult for our generation, right? It's so much harder for the kids in their teens right now because they've lived their entire life on social media. They were born with Facebook accounts.
Right.
They've consumed YouTube all their life. And something as simple as just sit next to someone and start a conversation and talk about life and these things, it's really a skill that they need to learn. But, I think about my grandmother, and people would always make fun of her that every time she got on a train from one part of India to the other, she would like come home with 4 new friends, and then they would be living in our house for the next 5 days. And that's how human connections were established. But clearly not anymore, right?
No, things have changed a lot, for sure.
Yeah. So I think that's why it's important for us to encourage people to make conversation and make human connections. That's going to be the way the world changes, in my opinion.
Excellent. Yeah, that makes absolute sense. Thank you for that. So let's change direction again and sort of on a similar subject. Let's talk about social media. You've got quite a big following on social media, and it's really become a very big part of our lives. What would you say is your favorite thing about social media? And do you have a favorite platform?
Yep, I do. I usually use Instagram the most. Facebook has kind of like withered away for me now. I recently got on LinkedIn. I'm only still learning how to use it. I'm very intimidated by LinkedIn because I feel like everyone acts so serious.
Oh my God, same. Yes, it's so tough because I'm like, oh, unless I have something really important to say, I shouldn't post anything. So yeah.
But it is more of a professional platform, right? As opposed to a fun platform like Instagram.
But people are a bit stuffy on LinkedIn, in my opinion. I feel like, you don't have to be all professional all the time.
You can make it a bit more lighthearted.
Yeah. And I'm starting to learn how to use it. But Instagram is, my go-to platform.
Lovely. And have you encountered much negativity on your social media?
Not that much. I get the occasional creepy comment and a weird stalker or two, but otherwise it's not that bad.
I love that. A weird stalker or two.
So no real trolls in your feeds, which is lovely to hear.
Yeah, not really. I get 1 or 2 comments once in a while, but then I just delete it and move on. Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay, that's great. Yeah.
I mean, I think of Instagram as a billboard, right? And it's the billboard that I own. So I'm going to put on it what defines me. Like I'm going to curate the stuff I put on it to represent what I want my brand to be. A. B, you wouldn't, if you owned a brand, you wouldn't let somebody just like drive by and spray paint something on your billboard. So if you have a negative comment, put it on your own billboard. Don't put on mine.
Very good. I like that.
Like that. That's a great metaphor. Okay. Well, to stay on the positive note, what have been some of the highlights of your entire journey so far?
Definitely my big decision to jump out of radio and do Hive full time. That's been, I think, one of the biggest decisions of my life, and I'm very glad I did it. And of course, before that, moving to Dubai was a huge move. I never thought. I always feel like I'm a little bit of a misfit in the city because I'm not about the bright, the fancy cars and the cool houses, and I'm not that kind of person. I'm very much if read a book and find a simple place, that kind of vibe. So to think that Dubai has been so kind to me in spite of me being such a misfit, I still marvel at that every day.
I gotta disagree with you on one thing though. I feel like Dubai tries to portray itself in that sense a lot, of course, and people see it that way. But there are a lot of, as you call them, misfits who are just regular people who don't really care about the fancy cars and the shiny things and just, yeah. So I think maybe that community is a lot bigger than people think. Because obviously what you see on media, a lot of people try to portray a different lifestyle to what they actually have. So there was probably a lot of people to relate to you.
Yeah, there's a growing sort of sense of like, okay, but where's the culture? Where's the pottery place and the nice little cafe and the bookstore and the theater, and these little things are springing up in different parts of the city, and I think it's growing. I think 10 years from now Dubai will have a thriving culture scene that really supports local talent, and I hope I'm there to see that.
For sure.
Well, that's what makes Dubai so fantastic.
Malavika, after such an incredible journey that you've had so far, obviously, could you tell us if you have any big plans for the future or anything exciting that you've got planned?
I think I have lots of plans that I kind of stash away thinking, okay, look, one step at a time. Let's just get done with this term and these students. I'd love to see the Hive do more work in schools. I think that's something that I'm actively working on, schools and universities, because I think it's the kids who don't walk into a drama class that really need drama. So that's one. The second thing that I'm very actively working on is public speaking coaching for adults, because I've come to understand that my experience in media has taught me something that I think I now have the vocabulary to transfer to other people, which is how to impactfully tell a story and how to engage with an audience. And that's something that I'm working on growing and building. And it's been a great journey for me, because I thought that I was only interested in working with kids. But the more adults I meet, I'm like, I think there's something that I can contribute here. So that's the second thing. And the third thing that I really want to do is more work with books. I think some kind of library space or a bookstore, or finding a way for me to work the books into this. I'm still working on that, but I'm sure there's something that I can do.
Do you see yourself writing a book?
I would love to write a book, but I'm so scared. But I really should write a book.
Especially since you have so much to say about diversity and how important it is to you. I think that when you have so much passion, these type of things start to come naturally to you. And I'm sure, if you are worried, you'd find people that would be super happy to help you out and kind of structure it the right way and all those types of things.
Yeah, I'm going to do it. That's it. Going to write that children's book.
See, we love it.
Yes.
Because you did say you come from a family of publishers, right? So you have your DNA.
I do. I have it in my DNA. I have it in my DNA.
We're looking forward to that. We'll be supporting you along your journey to accomplish that, for sure.
Thank you.
Yes.
So thank you so much for sharing your story with us so far. But now we've come to the segment of our show where we'd like to ask you some rapid fire questions. So it's our little version of a game show. So just answer whatever pops into your head first.
Sure.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Good.
A song that you're currently obsessed with.
It's like this salsa kind of song. Na 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 na. I don't know. It's like
Oh yes, I know that.
You know the one?
Yeah,
I think it's called Magalea. I think.
Yeah, that I don't know.
Yeah.
But I do recognize it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do the next one. What is your favorite quote?
People will forget what you say and people will forget what you do, but they will never forget how you made them feel.
Lovely.
Super, super good. Okay. What did you dream to be when you were a child?
I wanted to be on stage. I used to practice what my acceptance speech would be once I won a Tony Award for my play on Broadway. But
wow. That's so cute.
Excellent. Very good. And what is one thing you do on a daily basis, regardless of how busy you are?
I call my parents for half an hour every single day, no matter what. They are my X and Y axis.
Aww,
yeah.
I love that. That's
so
important. Yes, so important. Okay. Great.
I try to meditate, but some days I do, some days I don't.
But that's fantastic to have that strong connection with your parents when you live far away from them. Oh, I'm assuming you live far away from them.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Excellent. Lovely.
Yes, thank you so much for playing along.
Thank you.
Now, before we wrap up, we would like to do our green pill moment. So for our green pill moment, we'd like to ask you, could you please share an inspiring or life-changing experience that you've gone through, your green pill moment?
Absolutely. It was, and I remember this so distinctly, it was July of 2018. I decided to do a ridiculous trek in Kashmir. It was a 10-day trek through the Great Lakes, which means that you have no cell phone coverage. And I did it solo. I did a solo trek. But I had two people who accompanied me, in the sense that one was a trekking guide and one was a horse guy. So him and his horse, right? And this was in Kashmir. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with the politics of Kashmir, but it's one of the most politically charged places in the world. It's highly militarized, but it is truly like, being in the
so
palm
beautiful.
of God's hands. It is unbelievably beautiful. Just before I got on that trip was when I told my friends that, hey, do you think I could buy over the Hive? And do you think I could take on this responsibility? And the day I came back, I called them from the airport saying, hey, I need to come over and discuss something. And that was the day that I said, I want this. I think those 10 days of disconnection, I mean, I don't mean to sound like some crazy hippie or the 700,000th wild story that you've heard, but it was truly, truly, truly life-changing. I think everything becomes clear to you in that kind of isolation.
That makes absolute sense, that you have to disconnect from everything to allow your mind to explore and to see opportunities and to make breakthroughs. So
absolutely.
It does
100%.
Make absolute sense.
Absolutely.
That's a crazy experience to go through. I mean, I'd probably be too scared to trek by myself for 10 days. That's brave of you. I mean, that's amazing. I really like that.
Thank you. More than brave, really, it was about like, when can I shower next? How much longer do I need to find a rock and dig myself a hole in?
The fun things.
But these are the kinds of experiences you never forget, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you so much for sharing your fantastic and that very personal and inspiring story with us today. I know I have really enjoyed this conversation, and I'm sure our audience will also enjoy it. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Hilary, and thank you, Shireen. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Yes, so just before we say goodbye, could you tell our listeners where they can find and follow you on social media?
Absolutely. My name is Malavika Varadan. You can find me on LinkedIn now. Ta-da! At Malavika Varadan, spelled Malavika space Varadan. And the company that I run is called The Hive. And you can find us on social media as Live at Hive.
Fantastic. Thank you again.
Thank you.
And thank you again so much for joining us today. We wish you and The Hive all the very best.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so, so, so much. It's been a pleasure.
If you enjoy our conversations, please like and subscribe. See you next Wednesday.